and his family, and he hadn't been down here in years. And we looked at the ocean side, and you can't see any water. Built hotel after hotel after condo after hotel after condo. Went over to Fort Adams and looked back at Newport and Thames Street. It's a solid mass of buildings. It wasn't like that at Bethlehem. And Mary and Joseph had gone there looking for a place because there was no electronics. You didn't punch in on your computer. For the census, you had to show up in person at the city that you were born in to report to the census that the government had required. Bethlehem was busy. A lot of people who had been born there had gone to other areas. In general, we as people, we move according to where our jobs are. And then we settle our homes in that area. But they had to go to Bethlehem. City was full, so full that one of the places they tried to stay at, the keeper of the inn said, "We have no more room, no seats." No sense waiting in line because you all needed the same thing at the same time. It wasn't like a restaurant where these people would eat and leave, and then you could sit down. Not where it was. They needed a place to sleep. The donkey that had carried them from Nazareth to Bethlehem needed water, needed food. It wasn't an electric donkey. They weren't able to plug it in. It needed to be cared for. And the innkeeper, in compassion, said this, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the only thing I got left is my stable is not full. If you want to push the straw around and put a blanket down and lay down in there, you're welcome to, and we'll care for your donkey. And so they did. Somewhere along the way, Mary came full term. I have a hard time picturing childbirth in those days. There was no maternity ward for her to go to. There was no NICU unit to put a premature baby in if something went wrong. No doctor. Once in a while, midwives. But there they are in a stable, pretty much by themselves. If they wanted to talk to somebody, they had to talk cow language, horse language, donkey language, because that's who was in the stable. Mary looked at Joseph. Joseph looked at her and says, "Oh man, what a predicament we're in. Hope it's a normal birth. Hope there's no complications." And so after all that traveling and all that jostling and a long ride on the donkey, of course she was ready to deliver. And so the child was born. We have no details. If you read the King James, it said you'll find the baby in a manger in swaddling clothes. That term swaddling refers to blankets that are made for a baby. But I don't know what they brought along. Whatever they had, they had. Whatever blankets they had brought with them. And so the baby was born, and the mother and baby were found in the manger. What an experience. This young girl that was a virgin, promised in marriage to a young man by the name of Joseph, they found themselves doing some very adult things in a hurry. They weren't quite ready for that. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. But God had stepped in and said, "You're going to give birth to the Christ child." And she had what theologians call the Immaculate Conception, because Joseph was not the biological father of the child that was born. And so she gave birth to the Christ child. At that point, Things are kind of normal. But the two of them had to be totally exhausted. Now, God's clock keeps perfect time. There are many times in our lives when you and I have said in the events of life, God, where are you? Where's God in the middle of this? Why am I going through this? Why am I experiencing this? Why me? Unfortunately, why is a question a child can ask, a philosopher cannot answer. Why? We don't always know why. And Mary and Joseph were there in the stable, and they thought they'd had enough excitement. The baby was born, they're not home. And the home that they wanted to take their baby to was many, many miles away. But there they were. Now on the hillside, you can decide when and where the baby was born, whether it was born daytime or night. The Bible doesn't tell us. It's part of the things that we speculate. And on the hillside were the shepherds. Quiet night, dark, stars were out. I don't know where the moon was in that cycle, but it was a quiet night. But that quietness got interrupted. Angels from on high had an assignment that night. And they broke the stillness of the night and gave those strong shepherd guys who are used to negotiating the nights the biggest fear they ever had. They were scared because an angel showed up. And as soon as the angel showed up, there was light everywhere. Not darkness, light. Not a little light, not a candle, not like we got here. Light shone all around them. There was light. You and I have seen those construction lights that contractors set up at night. When they have those independent generators on a pole, and they see 3 or 4 huge floodlights. They can light a lot up, just one stand of them. And where they stood there, the light, it made it look like daytime. Now they could see each other. And they could see the one that came up to spoke to them, and that made them even more afraid. It didn't say they were afraid. It says they were terrified, really afraid. And the angel gave to them the same message that was given to Zechariah, the same message that was given to the Virgin Mary, and the same message that was given to the shepherds. Don't be afraid. Stop shaking. It's okay. I'm an angel of the Lord. What would you do if an angel walked up to you? Huh? Would it be normal? Would it rattle your cage? Would mine. If I walked in this church and there was an angel standing here, whew, I hope to tell you I'd be one scared puppy. Because it's not what you see every day. Who are you? Why are you here? What did I do wrong? It's the first way your brain goes. What did I do wrong that you're here? What are you going to do to me? And the angel said those words. Jesus, when he was alive, and the disciples were in a boat, and the seas were tumulting, and the waves were high enough that they were spilling into the boat, said, peace, peace be still. And so the angel that day, and though it does not tell us here that it was the angel Gabriel. Gabriel appeared to Zechariah. Gabriel appeared to Mary. It doesn't say this was Gabriel. If an angel. We don't know what his name was. No sooner had he said to them, do not be afraid. And they heard singing. Oh man, it wasn't 1, it wasn't 2. It might have been 50. I don't know. That doesn't tell us the number. It says a host. A host is many, many, many. a heavenly host started singing and glorifying God. They weren't singing Christmas carols because they hadn't been written yet. I don't know what they were singing. They were singing about a Messiah that had been promised, that was born. And they were singing songs that the shepherds understood. When God talks to you, you understand. When God has a message for you, there's no doubt it was him. Somehow or another, it's all different. And you know that God has spoken to you. And he told them the story about the manger in Bethlehem and where the Christ child was. Don't forget, there were no wise men here. There was no guiding star to tell them where to go. We're talking shepherds. The question in my mind, why the stable? Why shepherds? Of all the people that God could have announced, why didn't he go to the temple? Why did he go to the hillside, to the shepherds? Why? Because our shepherd was being born that night. The Lamb of God that taketh away the sin of the world was being born as a baby that night. Mind-boggling. Now the shepherds had a choice. What do? We're all awake now. The sheep are down. Nobody's bothering them. We can't all go. I want to go. I want to go. I want to go. Somebody's got to stay behind and stay with the sheep. But set a group of them. And we don't know how many was in that group. We don't know they were tall, short. We don't know if they had brown hair. We don't know if they had white hair. We don't know what they had. The Bible doesn't tell us. The angel just said, you're going to find an inn. And at that inn, don't ring the front door. Go to the stable. There, in the manger. And every one of them knew what a stable was like. They knew what the manger was like. They were very much at home at that end of the inn. How'd they find the right one? I'm not sure. Did they have to go to 4 or 5? I don't know. There was no GPS. Like the wise men, there was no star overhead to tell them where to go. But they found the place. And the angel said, you will find the baby and its mother in a manger. King James uses the word swaddling clothes. NIV uses regular blankets. Whichever is correct. It's a choice of words. The baby was wrapped up. Babies cannot keep themselves warm when they're born. You have to wrap them up tight and put something on the head and something on the hand. As soon as they leave the mother, they're freezing. So the baby was wrapped up next to its mother. You imagine the Son of God being in such a helpless form as that of a baby? But in order for you and I to be forgiven of our sins, he had to be born of a virgin so that there was no sin within him. Because original sin is passed from father to child, not from mother. And so he was born without sin. The shepherds that day had the same decision that all of us have in our own lives. When you hear about Jesus, what do you do about him? What's your reaction? When you hear the Christmas story, is it just a story? Or is it the backbone of everything that we believe in our theology in the New Testament and our faith in Jesus Christ and the hope of resurrection? And so you today have the same decision as the shepherds. What do you do with Jesus? Leave him? Follow him? Or not? Well, God didn't do it the way they expected. He doesn't do anything in your life the way you expect either. God doesn't think like we do. He doesn't do things on the timetable that we think he should do them. And God, why aren't you doing this? Where are you? You listening to my prayers? Yeah, he is. Everything he does in his time, not ours. And so I share with you today the age-old story of a child born in a manger. He wasn't born on Christmas Day that we celebrate. That's a man-made choice that we've made over the years. Who claims credit for that? I'm not sure, whether it was the church or who. A day was assigned for Christmas. I don't know what time of year he was born. The Bible doesn't tell us. But we don't know he was born. And the shepherds had told a message they'd never heard before by somebody they'd never seen, and listened to music like they'd never heard before. You hear the roar of motorcycles. They're giving out toys for Christmas. We go back to the quietness of our lives and the chaos of the world that we live in. We need Jesus more than we've ever needed him. We need the message of peace and goodwill to men more than we've ever needed it in this world. If that message spreads, you'll spread it. The whole tradition of giving gifts was a tradition of goodwill to others. We don't do it Jewish style. But when they did Hanukkah, they do 7 days of giving gifts. We do it on one day. To each of you, as you gather with your families this year, I wish and I pray that the peace of God fills your hearts and your homes. And that God uses you as a light in the world, as a salt of the earth, to spread peace, goodwill to men. We'll stand together and sing the last